Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the St. John's Power Hour, number 25. I can't believe it. I am your host, Susan Damiani, and I am the Director of Gift Planning. I'm also the Director of the McAllen Society, which is the St. John's Legacy Society. And if it's your first time joining us, I created the Power Hour series at the start of the pandemic, because I really felt that it was important for St. John's to stay connected to our Lachlan and McAllen Society members who I work with and who I have been working with, I can't believe, for almost 17 years now at St. John's University. And we offer really great programming and events. And so we transitioned to a virtual setting and we named it the Power Hour. And it's been really great staying connected to all of you. But at times there's always, certain topics that we feel would be great to open up to the general alumni and friends and employees of the university. And today is one of them. And I'm really excited because we're starting off this month of wellness. Thought it was really important with the pandemic, to really think about our health and well-being. And I couldn't think of any better coaches out there than Corey Berger and Liz Smith from Rebel Living. Super coaches. Thank you, Corey and Liz, for joining us today. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having us.
Good. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to introduce everyone to you because I think if anybody has been focused during this pandemic, it's been Rebel Living, and especially Liz and Corey, really focused on healthy living. And I hope, and I think I know, that they will definitely share great knowledge on how to stay focused, to stay healthy, especially during this pandemic. But one thing before I turn it over, I was telling Liz and Corey that I was watching Cobra Kai last night. It's the third season. I just found out through all my Facebook friends. I didn't even realize, I just finished watching the second season. And believe it or not, Karate Kid, I'm going to show my age now. We are fit over 40, so I fit this group. So I'll share with the group that I, within this age group. But the Karate Kid, I believe, came out in 1987, and that's when I graduated from St. John's University. So it was kind of apropos that I would share this. Now, everybody remembers Miyagi-Do, and Daniel, in the episode, it's called The Right Path. And in this episode, Miyagi-Do, he's reading letters from his Miyagi. And in the letter, he says, in life, we always lose our way, but it is people, not the signs, that guide us back to the right path. So last night I was thinking about it and I'm like, I really want to share this with the group because I feel that sometimes, with healthy living, we do lose our way. So many things happen, and especially now with the pandemic, maybe many of you, that's why you signed on today. I know I turned to Rebel Living with some help because I'm experiencing some issues and really having a hard time to shed some of these pounds. And, it just felt like I want to get back on the right path. And certainly I turned to the right people, Corey and Liz. So I'm going to turn the computer over to them. They have a great presentation for you, and I hope you really enjoy it and you learn some good tips on healthy living. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Susan. That's best introduction I've ever gotten. So I appreciate it. And I love the tie-in to Cobra Kai because I'm obsessed with that show right now. And I don't know how it's possible that you graduated when the show originally came out, being that you're only 29. So we'll have to figure out the math on our next call for that. But thank you again. And I'm going to pull up this presentation so we can get started. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to all of you taking time out of your busy days to be here with us today. Hopefully, we'll be able to share some insightful information about how you can truly age like a rebel. So without further ado, let me share this presentation with all of you, and we will jump right in. Liz? The floor is yours.
Yes. All right. Well, guys, thank you again for having us, and Happy New Year to everybody. As you know, we're going to be talking about being fit over 40. I am 41 years old. I am quickly getting there. And I remember like it was yesterday being 18 years old, and my daughter just turned 18. It's absolutely insane. So without further ado, I am going to just give a quick intro about who I am, how I started, and why I am here. So like I said, 21 years old. I'm a mom of 3 girls, 18, 15, and 10. And my own personal journey didn't start because I felt that I needed to lose weight or I had some sort of a health care. My personal journey started with the unexpected death of my own mother when I was 33. First off, my mom, like many of us, was a part of me died with her too. So it's really important that I share this story because it is the very beginning of why I created Rebel Living with Corey and why I jumped on my own health journey. So my mom was 65 years old, and she was in her last year of being a New York City school teacher. She was probably one of the liveliest people you would have ever met. And by the way, she was a St. John student as well. So I'm proud to say that about my mom because she actually went to college when I was a young child and put herself through school for many, many years. Getting back to what happened was my mom on the outside looked perfect. She didn't even look her age, but whatever was happening to her on the inside, it was definitely slowly killing her. All the signs were actually there. And when I think back about it and I think about the signs that she was having, we should have known immediately that she was having problems with her heart. But we ignored them because, like I said, on the outside, she looked healthy. She was lively. She never complained about anything. The signs that she was having was she was tired all the time. She had some shortness of breath at times, aches and pains. But we thought that this was just the aging process. And maybe she was a little bit stressed because she was in her last year of teaching and getting ready to retire. So those signs were ignored. She was talking about going to the doctor that day. She made an appointment. She was due to go see the doctor. She was letting all her kids out from school, dismissing everybody. And all of a sudden, she just felt extremely sick. She was throwing up, she was getting dizzy. All the teachers brought her in. They assumed that maybe she caught a bug. And again, because she didn't look her age, they thought that she was just maybe getting the flu. And pretty much that's where the story ends with my mom. She ended up dying there at the school. I know that health is so important. And even if you look healthy, if you your body and you're not doing the things right to age healthy, you could end up like that. And it's never too late to get yourself healthy and to feel good again. So that's why I'm here today. And that is the story that I wanted to share with you so that you guys could all understand that no matter what your age, we can get you there and we can get you there safely.
Yeah, I think, Liz, what went on with your mom really paints a nice picture of how important it is. You know, we can look and even kind of feel healthy without necessarily making major changes. But the question is, are we really taking care of ourselves, giving ourselves the best opportunity to thrive? When we talk about being fit over 40, we talk about rebelling against these misconceptions as far as age go. Our focus isn't on just surviving long enough to survive. It's about thriving. It's about optimizing that time that we have. We get one shot at this, whatever cliche that you want to cling to. It's an eye opener because you never know when something like that's going to happen. So if we can put steps in place to do our very best to avoid situations like that, it's so, so important. I know when you first shared that story with me, even though I'm not necessarily at that stage of my life, it was still an eye opener for me and for some of my loved ones and helped to push to get them moving in the right direction. Now, I'll share with you guys my story. It's a bit different. Nothing major as far as health scares go in that regard. But as a child, I was always very active. My parents put us in sports, both of my sisters as well, all of my friends, the whole thing. But as I started to enter high school, I started working for my dad. He had a bakery, a deli, a catering business. And I was spending more time at work, less time playing. And being that he had a bakery, I was known to sneak cookies here and there, more so here than there. And the nickname Cookie Man came about. So you can kind of guess what that looked like. And, you know, with being less active, less involved in sports, started to put the weight on. Now, my parents, they had always been focused on us being healthy. There was vegetables at every meal, plenty of water. You know, they were on top of things as best they could with the information that was available to them at the time. So they urged me to get back into sports, and I joined the track team following in my father's footsteps. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Now, because I was getting active again, I started losing some of that weight that I had gained from eating all of those cookies. And as the weight came off, my performance improved. So for me, the challenge was that I was starting to tie my performance to my weight. And I actually ended up getting a Division I scholarship to be a part of the track team at the University of Hartford. Fortunately, we weren't in the same division as St. John's because I would have had to put a hurting on some of your peeps. But that's a whole nother story. The problem was now I was conditioned to think that I needed to be as light as possible to be able to perform my best as a triple jumper. And so it's kind of what I was working towards: lose more weight, perform better. And I ended up setting a meet and a school record at the Harvard Invitational, which, great, you know, it's a proud accomplishment of mine, but it only reinforced that kind of negative wiring in my brain to say that I needed to continue down this path. And at a certain point, it kind of exploded, right? It blew up in my face where now I had gone too far, where I had undernourished my body and my performance started to suffer. But it wasn't just on the track. It started to suffer in school. It started to suffer in my social life, where it was creating this clouded judgment, this brain fog, a constant feeling of almost stress and overwhelm. And the problem just continued to get worse because I had no clue at the time that it was because of my lack of proper nutrition, proper training, proper cognitive conditioning. Fortunately for me, my strength and conditioning coach at the time, who I developed a really good relationship with, got to know me well enough to realize something was wrong. And he pulled me aside one day after training, which was a terrible performance on my part, and said, you know, Corey, listen, I can tell there's something wrong here. What's going on? Is there something at home? I said, no, everything's great. I'm training hard. I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to do. And we got into the discussion and I started to explain to him what was going on. And part of that was, you know, what my nutrition looked like. And he sort of kind of like smacked me upside the head and was like, okay, we need to fix this, and slapped a book, you know, 1,000, 2,000, bigger than I've ever read before, in front of me and said, you read this, and until you do, we're not training anymore. And it was all about performance nutrition. And it was a huge eye opener for me. I had no clue how far off base I was, but thank God for him. Number one, for saving me, because the path I was on was destructive. It could have ended up in a more significant or severe story like Liz shared. But thankfully, he caught it and had the wherewithal to give me the education that I needed to prioritize my health. And my performance only improved from there, which was awesome. But the lesson wasn't necessarily in the nutrition side of things as much of an important thing as I think it is. The lesson was in the ability to be able to help people to optimize. What I keep talking about, I always go back to optimization. It's a big thing for me. And because of that, because of him giving me that knowledge, passing it on to me, I felt I needed to reciprocate and pass that knowledge on to others. And that's where my journey as a coach started, and why I believe, having gone through that particular story, mine being so vastly different than Liz's, when we got together and we discussed creating Rebel Living, having these two polarizing stories, we felt it was an opportunity for us to help more people whether they're professional level athletes or complete beginners with no nutritional knowledge, young, old, or in between, it didn't matter because we had the knowledge and the experience to be able to guide people. So that's kind of where Rebel Living was born. A little bit of, well, actually a lot of it, because as you'll get to know, a little bit long in the tooth. But we'll move on. We'll jump into some of the information that's going to help you guys to avoid stories like ours, or if you've had one, to pull yourself out of it.
Okay, so healthy aging. So let's get right to it. Today, we're going to be talking about healthy aging and the most important elements to watch and nurture. And those are your bone health, memory, and muscle preservation. It goes without saying that as we age, every part of our body, inside and out, changes with the aging process. While we can't necessarily turn back time, we can certainly slow it down and make some significant fixes by making changes to things like our diet, mobility routine, and mental activity. So we're going to move on and talk about some of those common misconceptions.
So these ones bug me. They bug the hell out of me. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. They're so common. We see them all the time. We hear them everywhere we go, and they're completely untrue. And we're going to break down why they're untrue. But first, I want to highlight the misconceptions that are being thrown in your face on a regular basis. The first one being that exercise is more challenging or becomes limited, and therefore it's more risk than reward, right? So stay away from, unless you've been doing it for years, stay away from exercise. You're probably going to throw out your back, hurt your knee, and not be able to do what you like to do on a regular basis. Nonsense. Number two, mental acuity, the ability to learn and retain new information. Either it significantly declines or even more so, it's beyond our control as we age. And there are tons of examples. I'm going to give you a few in just a second of people that have blown this away, have completely bucked the trend here to show that this is not the case. The other is sleep. Sleep is one that I believe is very underrated. For Liz and I, with all of our clients, sleep is a big priority. Susan mentioned that we have been working with her a little bit, and that's one of the priorities for us, she can attest to. But the idea here is that it becomes less important or less valuable as we age. You don't need as much sleep. You're not as active. You're not, getting restful sleep to go to work or whatever the case may be as often. Not true. Again, complete misconception. And the last one, bone density. Now, bone density is one of those things that I think is at the forefront of awareness as far as aging goes. But the misconception here is that the declines in bone density are more of a concern for women than they are for men. And we're going to go into depth here and give you some information about how that's untrue and some of the things that we can do to make sure that we prioritize our bone health as well as our muscular health, our mental health. But before we move on, I want to give you a couple of examples just as proof that these misconceptions are nonsense. And the first two are clients of ours. The first one being Laura, who is actually a St. John's alumni herself. She was hopefully going to be on the call today. I'm not sure if she actually is. If you are, Laura, hi. But I thought you were a perfect example, if you're on here, of overcoming some of these misconceptions. Having started running in her 30s, now in her early 50s, Laura's completed multiple, not just one, but multiple Ironman triathlons. And not only that, she's still improving times, getting stronger, getting better. And for those of you that don't know what an Ironman triathlon is, Laura's on. Hey, Laura. How are you, girl? An Ironman triathlon is over 2 miles of swimming, followed up by over 100 miles of biking. And then you finish that off with a full 26.2 miles of running, an entire marathon. Not for the faint of heart, not easy. Yet this is something that has become a new hobby for Laura. And she has rebelled against all of these misconceptions like a good rebel should, and just showing us what the human body is capable of, what the human mind is capable of. So the other one I wanted to give you is Jerry. Jerry's another one of our clients. Jerry has never tracked any sort of nutrition, no background education as far as nutritional information or exercise information would go. And for her, this was all a brand new learning experience. So this kind of falls under that mental acuity category, the ability to learn and retain new information. For her, rightfully so, a bit concerned coming into the program. Am I going to be able to learn this? Am I going to be able to do this? And with some of the structure, the systems that we put in place, been able to not only learn the information needed to put her health and well-being at the top of the priority list, but she's excelled in having results. In the 3 months with us, losing almost 16 and a half inches, which is, I mean, nearly unheard of. That's a huge win. So those were two great examples that I thought clients of ours, but then I thought to myself, well, Corey, you know, people might say, easy for you to give examples of clients. Let's hear some other real world examples. So I came prepared. Don't you worry. First one, this is one of my favorites. I go back to the Ironmans because this year I set a goal to complete an Ironman myself. I'm signed up to compete in Atlantic City in September, and having kind of jumped into the whole training experience, I came across Sister Madonna Buter, and she is unbelievable. If you've never heard of her, I suggest looking her up. I'll give you a little bit of background. This woman started running at 46 years old. A priest gave her a suggestion that maybe she should go for a jog on the beach to clear her mind, focusing on that mental health aspect of things. And it turned out she loved it. This woman has now completed over 46 Ironman triathlons. Remember how long I told you those are. But I told you she started at 46. The 46 triathlons, Ironmans that she's completed now, she's now setting records in the 80 to 84 age group. She finished that full distance, the 2+ mile swim, 100+ mile ride, 26+ mile run, in just over 16 hours, setting the record for that age group, which, by the way, they created that age group because they had nowhere else to put her. She was the only one doing this at that age, and now it's exploded. So she's one great example out there. I also wanted to bring up Tao Lynch. Now, Tao Lynch, she's actually from Westchester area, so she's not far from all of us. And Tao is known because she really kind of was one of the pioneers of the yoga movement, yoga becoming very popular. And she's been traveling and teaching yoga classes around the world for the greater part of her life, but she's still doing this at 97 years old, traveling around the world, teaching yoga classes. And not only that, she authored her first book at over 90 years old. That's just another great example. And one last one I'll give you guys is, because I don't want to leave the guys out of this discussion, Arthur Webb, 74 years old. Now, imagine this for a second. 130-degree heat, middle of the desert, sun beating down on you, nowhere to escape. Plant yourself there, think about how you'd feel. Probably not great. Now picture yourself as Arthur Webb running 135 miles uphill in that desert, completing what some consider to be the hardest test of endurance on the planet, the Badwater Ultramarathon. In the middle of the desert, awful situation. This guy completes it at 74 years old. So these are a bunch of examples of people that have completed amazing, amazing accomplishments, completely throwing these misconceptions to the wind and becoming absolute rebels on their path to doing it. Now, that I've given you those examples, I do want to say we're not necessarily recommending that you go out and be an ultramarathon runner or find yourself in the middle of the desert having to go uphill. It's not necessarily the case. It may not be for you. So the one last example that I have is my father, who I mentioned to you before, 60 years old, worked 35 years on a cement floor, 2 neck surgeries under his belt, back injuries, etc. I should mention prior to me learning all of this stuff, starting Rebel Living. Now that we've gotten him to work with us, put his trust in the process and the structure that we've created, he's a 60-year-old man with a six-pack that all of his friends are jealous of. And it's just so that when he's hanging by the pool, grilling for his families and friends, he feels comfortable in his bathing suit. And that's a huge win also. That's an amazing accomplishment for most people. So I wanted to give you these examples to show you that these misconceptions are absolute nonsense. You don't have to believe everything you read or hear, but we are going to give you the facts, the truth behind all this. And what we see all too often is that these misconceptions, they're getting more media attention, which creates this disbelief. I mean, how many times have you heard that you can't do any of those things that I just mentioned, right? Probably quite a bit. or that you need to be cautious. Every ad or commercial on television, on your phone, in your email is about all of these problems that we'll face as we age, all of these challenges. And yeah, they exist, but the solutions are much more simple than we're actually led to believe. And that's why you don't hear about people like Laura, like Jerry, like Sister Madonna, or even my father as regularly as you hear about the problems that you're going to be faced with. So that's why we wanted to bring you the simple truths about how you can actually take control of the roadmap of the rest of your life, how you can optimize, how you can thrive for the rest of your life. Liz?
All right. So I'm sure you all heard this: a body stays in motion. And it's 100% true. My father has been saying this for as far back as I can remember, and he's now 80, still moving faster than some 30-year-olds. Moving your body doesn't mean you have to hit the gym every day. Movement is different for everyone. The most important thing to remember is you need to keep moving. You need to keep that heart pumping and blood circulating. Exercise, disease, lower the risk of falls, improve mental health and well-being, and improve cognitive function. Corey, can you explain in more detail the 3 types of activities we should be focusing on and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Liz mentioned, got to get moving, got to stay moving. The way we do that is focusing on these 3 major types of activity: aerobic activity, resistance, strength training, which is our anaerobic activity, and balance and flexibility. So the aerobic activity, that's the first one. That's our longer efforts like walking, running, cycling, swimming, things of that nature. And the reason these are important is because they require greater oxygen utilization by our body. And it helps our body to become more adept at not only oxygen utilization, but absorption and transportation by our body's cardiovascular system. So we're thinking circulation, heart health, things of that nature. So that's an important one to balance or to put into the fold as we're creating the structure for an exercise template for getting someone moving. The next one, the resistance, the strength training activity, that's an anaerobic effort if we're looking at the energy systems of the body. What that means is it's usually shorter, higher intensity or maximal load type efforts where we're using things like weights, resistance bands, balls, things of this nature to create that resistance to drive stimulus to the muscles. We're actually creating a stress response in the muscles by tearing them down, which in turns allow them to create adaptation by providing proper nutrient to those muscles so that they can grow, become stronger, healthier, more capable muscles. Now, this doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go max load every single time. As I mentioned, you don't have to be Arthur Webb running 135 miles in the desert, but it's important to have balance of these 2 things because they're going to focus on different areas of the body, one being that cardiovascular system, blood flow, as I mentioned, the other being muscle strength, joint strength, tendon and ligaments, all of those things, as you can see in the benefits and the results here in the slides. But I don't want to leave out the importance of balance and flexibility. I actually believe that most people overlook balance and flexibility as part of a training protocol. It's kind of seen as a little bit boring, a little mundane. They're less sexy as far as activities go than the aerobic activity or the anaerobic activity. But I want to bring you back to Pau, who I was talking about teaching yoga classes, writing books at almost 100 years old. There's absolutely no disputing the long-term benefits of balance and flexibility training. No dispute there. And as a part of an overall protocol, we believe that they should actually all be in balance, meaning that you're spending equally as much time focusing on your aerobic activity, your anaerobic activity, and your balance and flexibility training so that you can have a well-developed system to make sure that your body can perform day-to-day tasks very well without injury, without setbacks, without difficulty, but also that we're focusing on allowing the body to recover. So as I mentioned, the body breaks down on purpose. We create that stress response when we're doing this aerobic and anaerobic activity. We need to focus on those recovery efforts to allow our body to function day after day. That's our goal, right? Is to be able to continue to do this each day, every day, year after year, for many, many more years of our lives. So by making sure that we have balance among these three different activity types, we can really, again, limit the possibility of injury, allow for proper recovery, and maximize our overall health and daily well-being.
Okay, so what I want to explain to you guys is
Liz, we can't hear you.
you just have to start somewhere. Okay. Can you hear me now?
There you are. Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So what we want to remember is we need to start somewhere. Something is better than nothing. You want to keep it simple, just adding in 10 to 15 minutes, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever you do, and create micro workouts. It's something that everyone can and should do, especially if you're not active.
Sue, am I the only one that can't hear her?
Liz. You're coming
Sorry,
in and out a little bit, but I
Bear with us
hear
here.
you.
Just a bit of technical difficulties.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. Finish that part up, getting in 10 to 15 minutes extra a week. Doing things like walking, yard walk, dancing, swimming, just simple body weight movements. Do this a few days a week, bump it up a little bit, increase your time, make it a little bit more challenging. You want to just keep your body moving and keep listening to your body. When you need to stop, stop, but don't completely stop 100%. You want to just keep it going, keep that body in movement, keep challenging yourself, and make sure that you're doing the right thing for your body. All right, Corey, you can go on to the next slide.
I'm not sure I'm getting any volume on my end.
I hear you. I don't hear Liz, but I hear you.
You can hear me. Fantastic. I can't hear. All right. I'm over here talking to myself for a minute, which I'm pretty used to.
We can
But
hear
I'll be
you,
honest,
Corey.
Liz, I have no idea where you left off.
Is Liz with us?
No, we're going to
Sorry,
move on. I'm
everyone.
getting notes here, people. I appreciate your patience. I'm getting text notes through the chat here so I can see where we're at. So we're moving on to the next slide. This is the mental acuity part of the conversation. Now, you probably know at this point that I like to tell a good story. So I'm going to start off with another one here. Lately, my grandfather has been struggling from some confusion and some memory loss. It's not for a lack of trying to avoid that, unfortunately. It was a side effect of a medication he was misprescribed, which is all the more reason to prioritize health and try and avoid hospitals and doctors as much as possible. But the point is, watching this happen to my grandfather, but not only my grandfather, someone who's founded multiple successful businesses, created really a family chain of family businesses, and could probably have given Ken Jennings a run for his money in his prime. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for me. It's heartbreaking for my mom and her siblings, the rest of the grandkids. It's terrible to see. And the thing is, guys, we want to keep in mind, we've all seen this at some point in our lives, and no one wants to live it. It's hard to even imagine how frustrating it might be to have to live through that. So that's why for us, cognitive conditioning is an integral part of the process at Rebel Living. We want to make sure that we can override the misconceptions that we discussed and develop new skills so that we can stay sharp for many, many years to come. So like Jerry, the goal is to really foster an environment for new brain cell growth. And then we're going to talk in a little bit about some of the studies that show how that can actually be done, some of the research that's been done to prove this. But I want to focus on the result right now. And what that is a delay in mild cognitive impairment. It's staving off that misconception for as long as possible so you can keep making new memories and actually remember them. Because that's what it's about, right? Having those memories, those are one of the most magical things that we experience as humans. Really, for me, this is my nerd self. It doesn't even make sense how our brains can hold so many memories. There's a reason they're there. We want to remember them. But it's also partly about being able to make sure that we can continue learning new things, be a part of that growth of our families. You know, we've seen now for my grandparents, again, it was a challenge getting used to using Zoom to communicate with everything that we've been going through, or Citrix for that matter. So being able to learn how to use the computer, use these new softwares, set up webcams, things of this nature, it's important. But if you don't make it a priority, it becomes that much more difficult. Learning speed decreases, capacity for memory decreases. So we focus on creating a structure and a system to be able to develop new brain cell growth rather than to lose it. So Liz, let's talk about a couple of ways that we can do that.
Absolutely. So I know that meditation and mindfulness can sometimes feel really daunting. Like, do I have the time? How do I even clear my mind? How do I do these things? It's taking small steps just like anything else. So an easy practice that I like to start with my clients is a water meditation. Wherever you can get 5 minutes to listen to water running is a good place to start. Brushing your teeth, taking a shower, washing the dishes. Think about washing away any frustrations you might have or welcoming calmness as the water pours. You don't have to have an empty mind. It's about bringing calmness and relaxation into your day. Our minds are so occupied, it's hard to remember what it's like to be in the moment. You want to take the time to enjoy silence. You also want to take the time to get your brain cells moving again. So by learning new things, you get those brain cells developing, you start, to remember things quicker, be on your toes a bit. So while you do want to have some calmness in your life, you also want to create just enough chaos so that your brain continues to work. And if you guys can do that 5 minutes a day and then increase that time with these simple activities, you will see how easy it is to just bring calmness into your life, de-stress, and keep it moving forward.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I had a real struggle with that when I first started. I was never big into meditation and always kind of looked at it like, that's not for me. Having been diagnosed with ADHD, I felt like it would be a real challenge for me to be able to still my mind for so long. And I thought that was what you needed to do. So I fell kind of victim to some of these misconceptions. And Liz finally smacked some sense into me and was like, just start by listening to the running water. Like, you shower every day, right? And I was like, yeah, I do. So she's like, while you're in there, just focus on the sound of the shower. When your mind wanders, bring it back to the sound of the water hitting the floor. And it was an amazing transformation for me. It was like, wow, number one, I can do this. Number two, it's way simpler than I thought it was. Like, I thought I had to ohm and be in a specific position and all of this stuff. And it wasn't the case. It was just, like she said, kind of creating that stillness, but not necessarily needing to fight off thoughts, like accepting them for what they were and then moving on. And now for me, meditation is the first thing that I do every single morning. And the transformation has been absolutely phenomenal. My ability to control my emotions and my behaviors and my thoughts throughout the day, to be able to go to sleep without my mind racing, where in the past I used to use certain supplementation to be able to do so, and now I don't need to. The benefits are really endless. So that's one of the areas where I would say it's the simplest to start with, just listening to the water running, and it has some of the biggest benefits overall. So definitely give that a shot to get started, but let's also talk about some of the ways that we can use food as a resource to help boost our cognitive function. So, whoop, I blew past that one. There we go. So, food for memory, we can definitely use food to fortify our minds. There are tons of foods out there with brain boosting benefits, and they also provide a whole host of other beneficial vitamins and nutrients. And it's important, I like to bring this up when I'm talking about that, because this isn't necessarily an age-related misconception, but it is a misconception that's out there. And the more value that we can bring to you, the better. So what's being thrown in our faces is supplements on a regular basis. We're seeing take this for one thing, take that for another, vitamins, multivitamins, men's health, women's health, whatever the case may be. They're all over the place in food stores, supplement stores, just about everywhere you go now. You're being bombarded with all of these different things that you could or should be taking. The reality is that the studies that have been done show if we eat a diet consisting mostly of healthful, nourishing whole foods, we don't actually need much supplementation. Now, that being said, I always recommend, obviously, consult with a physician. Make sure you're getting regular blood work done. If you have pre-existing conditions, you need to be aware of those. I'm not saying that food can necessarily erase the need for a certain medication, but we've seen people come off of medications for diabetes through getting their diet correct. Matter of fact, Hippocrates, who is the philosopher, the doctor who the Hippocratic Oath is based on, the first do no harm, et cetera, that all the doctors practice. He's famous for saying that we should be our own doctors and that we should use food to heal ourselves. So there's tons of benefits from foods in that way as well. But moving on, specific to the brain, there are two sides of the story here. So I want to make sure that I paint both sides of the picture so that you get a clear understanding of how you can use food to your benefit and what things you should maybe avoid so that you're not putting yourself in a state of decline. And the main things to kind of keep in mind to keep out of the normal routine of eating as much as possible are things that cause inflammatory diet patterns. So we're talking high sugar foods, refined carbohydrates, unhealthy fats, or foods that are highly processed. Those have been linked with decreases in cognitive function, with a higher risk of things like Alzheimer's and dementia. So you want to be conscientious of how much of those types of foods you're consuming. Again, focusing on the nourishing, healthful whole foods, full of vitamins and minerals. But having said that, we believe in the 80-20 rule at Rebel Living, meaning if 80% or the majority of your nutrition comes from those healthful, nourishing foods, that it's totally okay to spend that other 20% of your daily consumption on the processed foods, on the foods that aren't necessarily as nutrient dense. They're okay to have, and you shouldn't feel like you need to punish yourself if you've had them or reward yourself by having them. Just make them a part of your everyday, and that'll allow you to be more consistent. You won't ever feel like you're actually on a diet. But in the meantime, that 80% being focused on those whole healthful foods will allow you to optimize, to thrive, to push. So it's something to keep in mind. But I will mention it's important that you have a clear understanding of how much your body actually needs so that you can ensure that 80% of your consumption is coming from whole healthful foods and 20% coming from other foods, processed things of that nature, and still be moving towards your goals, maintaining a healthy weight, etc. And that's where working with an expert, someone like myself or Liz, can come in handy. Now, as far as the foods on the right side here of the screen, the foods that have been shown to improve cognitive function, to increase mental performance, we also have to keep in mind that some of these, while healthy, aren't necessarily something that you can eat without regard, right? You have to, again, have an understanding of how much your body actually needs. So I'll give you a quick example, and then I'll explain which of these foods kind of fall into that category. I use this with a lot of people, and I'm going to ask for some of your participation here in the chat. So I'm going to give you two options, and you're going to tell me which one is healthier. Option one, the Big Mac. Everybody knows it, probably can sing the song. The Big Mac, option one. Option two, 4 ounces of grilled chicken, 165 grams of roasted sweet potato, 1 cup of salad, a little bit of chopped onions, some diced peppers, and a oil and vinegar dressing. I'll give a second. Go ahead and throw in the chat. If you're on, if you're listening, let me know whether you think the Big Mac or the grilled chicken meal is healthier. I'm seeing a lot of chickens come up. So that's good because it means that you guys are listening as far as the nutrient dense side of the story goes, right? Focusing on the foods that give us the biggest bang for our buck as far as vitamins and minerals are concerned. But if we're talking about that 80-20 rule and really focusing, I see one Big Mac come through. So someone who's spoken to me before obviously has an idea. So if we're focusing on that 80-20 rule, if we have a good understanding of how much our body actually needs, so we're talking about calories in versus calories out, then the truth of the matter is it depends. The answer is it depends. And here's why. If we're talking just vitamins and minerals, chicken all day, right? Way more vitamins and minerals. So if we're still focused on that 80%, boom, chicken, easy. If we're talking about that 20% and you're like, yeah, well, I'm really focused on losing a little bit of weight, so I can't have that Big Mac. No, sir. Got to stay away. The simple truth, both meals had the exact same amount of calories, the exact same grams of protein, exact same grams of carbohydrates, and the exact same grams of fat. They do the exact same thing in your body. So the idea here is that we really need to pay attention to what our bodies need in order to put ourselves in a state of optimization, to make sure that we're giving our bodies the right amounts of foods to move closer to our goals. And then if we are, right, if you have room for either of those meals based on your daily caloric needs, and majority of your food that day was nutrient dense, then that Big Mac is totally okay to have. So as I said before, don't feel bad. It's not reward or punishment having those processed foods. We just need to make sure they're not the largest part of our diet. So with that example, we look at some of the things on this list here that can help improve cognitive function. And the two that I'm going to pick out are the fish and the nuts. These two in particular are more calorically dense than most other foods. So that means that there are more calories in a smaller portion size relative to other foods. Meaning if you just jump in and eat tons and tons of fish, tons and tons of nuts, without any regard for your caloric needs on a daily basis, you could end up putting yourself in a caloric surplus, which could lead to weight gain and a whole host of other potential health issues. So we need to kind of keep in mind what's what. And again, that's why we recommend working with someone like myself or Liz to make sure that you clearly understand what your body needs, right? What your body needs in order to feel your best, to perform your best, to live your best, but also how much it needs to do those. Again, the goal is optimization so that you can beat all of those misconceptions. So that's just a little bit on how we can use food to our benefit, but those same foods can kind of put us in a little bit of trouble if we're not aware, if we don't have a plan, if we don't have structure. So with that, we're going to move on and jump to the next slide here. My goodness, the technical difficulties there. Kevin, we're going to have a Q&A section at the end of the presentation, so we could definitely answer some of those questions, and anybody else that has them. If you want to start throwing them into the chat, Susan and Sue are going to help us to moderate some of those questions at the end, so we'll make sure to get all of those answered for you. So sleep, moving on to sleep. I mentioned before the importance of sleep, how it's often overlooked. And the thing to keep in mind here is that we're not just looking for quantity. We're not just looking for how many hours you're sleeping, which is part of that misconception, is how many hours of sleep that we're supposed to have. There's that 7 to 9 hour guideline. And yes, we do want to make sure that we focus on getting that much sleep. But more importantly, we're looking for the quality of sleep. So recently, researchers have started to highlight the differences in the results cognitively, physiologically in trials between people being studied based on hours of sleep and based on quality of sleep. And they've noticed that there's a big discrepancy between duration and quality, and highlighted that quality has a greater correlation to improved health, overall health. So that's where we really spend a majority of our focus. It's actually one of the first things that we address with our clients in our program. I mentioned earlier. So what we realize is that some people face challenges, right? Inevitably, you're going to have things that get in your way as far as how many hours of sleep you can get, whether it be a job, whether it be kids or grandkids staying over, or maybe a Netflix series that you can't seem to turn off these days. So what we want to work on is slowly increasing to the required range, to our recommended range of hours of sleep. But while we're building up to that 7 to 9 hour range, we want to focus on implementing the strategies that we've created to improve the quality of our sleep, to make sure that we're creating an environment for us to, again, optimize. I love that word, optimize that quality of sleep so that we can reap all of the benefits. And the reason is because, sleep not only affects our immune and our circulatory systems, you can see on this slide here, but it also affects our nervous system, our cognitive function, our skeletal system, and our muscular function, as well as our hunger hormones and our potential for weight gain or weight loss. So if we're talking about everything on all of these slides thus far and what we still have left to discuss with you, the chain that connects them all is rest. Getting the proper rest to allow our bodies to recover. As I mentioned before, that teardown that happens in muscles during anaerobic activity, our bodies are more adept at recovering when we're sleeping. Our memories and short-term and long-term are stored during sleep. Everything that we learn throughout a given day is organized in our brains during sleep. So not only do you have these benefits of improved immune system function, lower risk for cardiovascular disease, decreased risk of lifestyle disease, but you're also regulating those hunger hormones so that your ghrelin and leptin are produced at the proper rate so that they signal when you're hungry and when you're full appropriately, rather than the converse, which happens when our sleep is limited, where we don't necessarily feel full, and majority of the day we feel hungry because the hormones get flip-flopped, where our muscles don't recover appropriately. So the next day when we go to be active again, because we're on a roll and we're committed to this healthier new us, we can't, because we haven't recovered, we haven't slept well, and our bodies aren't ready for that. So it's so important that we make sleep quality as much a priority as we make sleep quantity. So Liz, let's give a couple of simple ways to get started here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're doing is setting up an actual nighttime routine. Keep it really simple. You don't want to start extreme right at the beginning because it's not going to work that way. So you want to maybe go to bed 10, 15 minutes early for an entire week. Make sure that you're not on your phone, you're not going on social media. These things get our brains overactive and then we can't fall asleep. So start simple, have a routine going, have the lights down as you're getting ready for bed. This should all start about an hour before you're getting yourself into your bed, like actually going to sleep. As you continue ahead, you want to do 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes more. I can remember back in the day when I was working, I used to work in corporate. I would probably stay up till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, doing my work, try to go to sleep, and I'd be up again at 6 a.m. Now I've conditioned myself to go to bed every night at 9:30. I'm up at 6:30, perfect amount of time of sleep for myself. It took me a while to get there, but now my body automatically knows when it's time for sleep. That circadian rhythm has kicked in and it's on spot. Anytime that I go to bed off those times, it completely messes up the next day. But you need to work at it. You need to get there slowly. So 7 to 9 hours, cool, dark room, no devices 30 minutes before bed. Limit those fluids about an hour before so that you're not waking up in the middle of the night. And journal, clear your mind, get yourself going and ready for the next day. Write down your things that night that need to get done so that when you get up in the morning, you just start crossing off your list.
It's a beautiful thing. It's so important, and it helps to keep you organized for the next day, keep you on task, clear your mind. You're killing multiple birds with a single stone here. So make sure that we make this a priority as well. And with that, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about that bone density, because as we said, that's one that affects both men and women. It's one that I think most men aren't necessarily aware of, and we want to give you some strategies here to manage that as well. So Liz, go ahead and take it away.
Absolutely. Bone density. It's something that affects both men and women. More so women be aware of this as well. So unfortunately, this is something that happens to everybody. But what makes it a little bit different in women versus men is that for women, it begins at an early menopause. So depending on when menopause begins, you can pretty much assume that bone density will begin to decline. And the reason is because of the decline of estrogen levels. So if you start taking care of that now, eating the proper foods that are going to help support those estrogen levels, you're less likely to lose more bone as you continue to age. Now, for men, it's a little less likely to develop osteoporosis, but it does happen. And what happens when you experience some bone loss, it's likely due to testosterone deficiency. So some of the causes of male osteoporosis are low calcium and vitamin D, lack of exercise, the development of diabetes, which is why nutrition and fitness is so important. So people who develop diabetes, that's usually because of a poor nutrition and lack of exercise. So that's why all of these things are so important, because when we're younger, we don't really think about these things, but what we do when we're younger affects us as we get older. And if we haven't taken care of ourselves, then we want to start doing it right now, immediately.
Absolutely. And of course, using food, using exercise together can help to make sure that we set ourselves up for success, like Liz mentioned. Now, of course, we would be remiss if we were to finish without giving you some of the science. Even though it's our goal to simplify it for you so that you're better able to apply it, we wanted to make sure that you have a good understanding. So you guys remember the story of my grandfather. This is why it's so important to avoid these hospitalizations, to maintain optimal health so that you don't end up in a similar situation as him, or an even worse situation, potentially, God forbid, right? But the cost of healthcare, I think we all know, I think it goes without saying, is on the rise. And I'm not just talking about what it costs to actually be there, but the cost to your family, the cost to your livelihood. It's still something that's suffocating so many people these days. The amount of lifestyle diseases that we're seeing right now is on the rise. We have all of these tools and these resources at our fingertips, yet we're still seeing people fall victim to poor health. And the big one that stood out for me is that 60% of bankruptcies are from medical bills. That's staggering. That's unbelievably high number of bankruptcies. So we want to make sure that we prioritize our health, that we take advantage of all of the tools, all of the resources that we have available to us, and we can take that science and simplify it in a way that you're able to apply it to avoid falling victim to some of these things. Now, if the healthcare cost wasn't enough to scare you into getting on track here, not that we're necessarily trying to scare you into it, but if you're still a little unsure, or sitting there thinking like, yeah, sounds great, guys, this all makes a ton of sense, but I'm still not sure I can get started. I just want to give you a little bit more data scientifically to hopefully help to move you along. So first and foremost, almost everyone, and this is based on clinical trials that have been conducted with people with a whole range of pre-existing health conditions, almost everyone can do some form of each of the things that we discussed. Prioritizing sleep, exercise, nutrition, cognitive conditioning can all be done, especially, and we would recommend under the care of a professional. And also, as I mentioned before, you want to consult with your physician, especially if you have a pre-existing condition, to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what limitations that you may have. That doesn't mean that you're beyond help, that you can't get started. All we need to do is adjust. And that's what Liz and I do. We make sure that we can scale things appropriately to fit into your life. We're not trying to make carbon copies of ourselves. We're not trying to tell you that you need to go, again, run that ultra marathon. What we're doing is we're finding the littlest things that we can change to give you the biggest amount of benefit, the littlest hinges that swing the biggest doors so you can get started quickly and easily. So with that, there's new research. This is a recent study, July of this past year, shown evidence that exercise actually signals the liver to release a protein. It's called GPLD1. And this particular protein has been linked directly to brain cell growth in the hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that's associated with improvements in learning and memory. So when we're talking about that cognitive conditioning, making sure that we're increasing our capacity to learn new things, to make new memories and actually remember them, there is definitive proof now, a link between exercise, whether it's aerobic, anaerobic, or balance and flexibility, and the release of this protein helping us to fortify our brains for the long term. That's, I think, enough right there for most people, but I'll give you this last one because the percentages really opened my eyes when I read this study, and I think they'll do the same for you. This study was done with over 3,000 participants. Also a recent study, a little bit older than this one in July of last year, but what we found in this, or what the researchers found in this study, was that there was as much as a 60% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease based on certain healthy lifestyle factors. And they evaluated 5 different lifestyle factors to see how each one kind of worked together and whether or not you could go with just a couple, or if there was more benefit to making sure that you implemented all 5 of these healthy lifestyle factors. So based on this evaluation of these 5 factors, they found that your risk actually, or the decrease in risk, it decreases twice as much when you go from implementing 2 of the 5 healthy lifestyle factors. So you have a 32% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's with 2 of the 5. And if you double that to 4 of the 5, your risk of developing Alzheimer's lowers to 60%. So just by adding those 2 additional healthy lifestyle factors, you're decreasing your risk of developing Alzheimer's by double. It's huge. Again, we talked about my grandfather. I know nobody wants to go down that road. So I just, again, want to point out that these lifestyle factors that were evaluated in this study are very, very similar to the misconceptions. The opposite of those misconceptions are the truths that we gave you throughout the course of this presentation. So now that we've covered everything, and before we open up for questions, I just wanted to first again say thank you. because for us, this is, I can't even tell you how exciting of an opportunity this was when Susan first mentioned it to me, when I first mentioned it to Liz. We were over the moon excited to be able to have the opportunity to speak with such a great group of alumni, some of the other people that have joined us, but both being locals ourselves. What a tremendous opportunity. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to what we had to say. Our goal was to provide you with a boatload of valuable information, enough to sink the ship, along with some actionable steps to actually get you started. We wanted you to be able to walk away with some tips to be able to implement immediately. And of course, this whole presentation will be available to you in the next day or two. We're going to make sure that you all get it. So all of the little bits and pieces that we had on each of the slides, you'll be able to go back and review. But I also wanted to mention that, Liz and I work with dozens of clients from first timers to professional level athletes, I mentioned before, and of all ages. Our goal, as always, is to simplify that process, to make it easy for people to get the results that they want, that they need to stay healthy, to simplify the process of implementing structure around food, exercise, cognitive conditioning, and support based on each individual's unique needs. That's the key here, is that while a lot of this information is beneficial to all, everybody is unique in their own way. Their circumstances, their needs are different. So whether you've been at this for a while and you've experienced some ups and downs, or you heard us loud and clear and you're just ready to get started for the first time, we would love to help you deny those misconceptions. We want you to be able to laugh at a friend the next time they bring it up at a social gathering. Oh my God, did you hear? We're going to start losing our bones. I can't believe. And you could just laugh at them and go and flip the table over if you wanted to. We want to help you age like a rebel, whatever that means for you. So what we're also going to send out along with this presentation is some information about the company and how we work with people. So you'll be able to contact us to talk specifically about what getting a customized roadmap would look like for you. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. As you can tell, we love to talk about this, so we're here to answer. And with that, happy to take any questions if we still have some time.
Yes, we do. And I'm looking right now, I'm not seeing any questions yet, but thank you, Liz and Corey, for that very informative presentation. And I think you did give us a lot of tips and a lot of information that we need to seriously think about. Just to get, usually it helps to get started. And then the questions start coming in. So I actually have a couple of questions. I was laughing because, when you were saying about fish and nuts, I think that's all I eat. So I think that's probably how I gained some of my weight. And obviously sleep is, something that I'm really trying to work on. I know the start of the pandemic, I don't know if anyone else has the same experience, but in the beginning of the pandemic, I did see that my sleep patterns were off, and it was probably the anxiety of, what was going on in the world. But one question I have with cravings is cravings, because I've heard, two things, maybe it's because, I'm dehydrated, but sometimes is it your body telling you if you're craving something that maybe you're depleting yourself of something?
Absolutely. And there are a couple of ways that manifests. So sleep was the first one. I mentioned the hormones leptin and ghrelin. Those signal our body. Kevin, I see, I'll get you in a sec. Those signal our body to feel hungry and to feel full. And what happens with too little sleep is they kind of flip-flop. And we get signaled more that we're hungry and less that we're full, and potentially end up overeating. So that's where one experience of cravings can come in. The other one, which often gets overlooked, is that cravings can actually signal to us what we need to work on most. So what we look at is how you're feeling when you're craving something. not necessarily what you're craving, right? But why you're craving it. So oftentimes we'll hear from clients like, yeah, I don't know why, but every time I get tired, I just feel like I need some carbs. And it's like, okay, well, there's a couple of things that we could address here. One is your desire for carbs and where that comes from. But the one I want to focus on is the fact that it's every time that you're tired, your body is signaling for carbs. Now, carbs actually, if we're talking more of the lower glycemic carbs, are known to signal both boosts in serotonin, boosts in tryptophan, which help our bodies to sleep more restfully, to relax our bodies. So the craving for a carb when we're constantly tired could be our body's way of telling us you need more sleep. So we look at the relationship between these things to say, is it the carbs themselves, or is it what you're feeling at this moment that's giving us insight into what we need to focus on? Again, those little things that we can adjust to give you big results. So do we get more sleep, focus on the quality of sleep, those cravings disappear, and now you feel better because you're sleeping like a champ, and you look and weigh less because you're not eating carbs every time you're sleepy. You're getting the right amount based on what your body needs daily.
Yeah, the other thing I just want to jump at is, if you're eating a balanced diet, you're eating those vegetables, carbs, fats, protein, you're balancing everything, you're less likely to find yourself getting those cravings because now your body's receiving the nutrients that it needs. So, there's a lot of different reasons why we do get those cravings, and it's finding exactly the reason those cravings are coming to us. So that's why we usually try to work on one thing at a time to see. It's like a science experiment. Like, we can't just say, yes, this is exactly why you're having the cravings. We need to figure out the reason behind it and then kind of, cross it off the list for you.
One variable at a time.
Thank you. I know, Corey, you saw the question from Kevin about the Alzheimer's and a listing, and another question regarding nuts. What type of nuts?
I saw the one about the nuts. I didn't see the one about the Alzheimer's. So I'll answer that first, and then if you can tell me what the one about the Alzheimer's was. But the nuts, so really, it's funny. The first thing was walnuts because they looked like the brain, were the best for brain health. All of them have nutrients, vitamins, minerals, the different nuts, and have unique values to your body. You can actually get something out of almost all of them. But the main thing to consider, right, is, are they valuable as a source nutrient? So really the best thing to do first, Kevin, is to get an understanding of how much you need and then find out which one you like, because the likelihood is you're not going to be able to have a handful of every kind of nut, right? So once we figure out how much you need, then we can start to figure out, okay, well, what benefit do we really need to go after first? And then we can talk about what foods fill those benefits, how we can. So really the idea is that we figure out what the goal is first, what we really need to accomplish, and then we work backwards, and nuts would kind of be down at the bottom. That being said, start with walnuts, almonds, things of that nature. Those are typically higher in nutrients, have a larger quantity of protein relative to the amount of calories that you'll get from them, which we want to prioritize for a healthy diet. So those are a good place to start.
The other question Kevin had to Corey and Liz, the Alzheimer's study, 5 healthy lifestyle factors. Could you please list them?
I can share the study with you after, but I don't have the specific lifestyle factors off the top of my head. So that's something we could link this study in the email that we send out afterwards.
That would be great.
But I can tell you, Kev, they're mostly based on sleep, hydration, activity, proper nutrition, and smoking and alcohol, limiting the usage of those. In many, many studies, they're pretty consistent across the board.
I'm not seeing any other questions. I know we're coming up to the 2:15 mark. I know we went a little over time, but I just wanted to make sure I did answer everyone's questions. Basically, the the responses are everyone really loved your presentation. I do see one more, a question about the items that were mentioned to boost health. Blueberries, nuts, broccoli, all are no-nos for me due to diverticulitis, and I don't like fish. Any vitamin supplements to take in lieu of the items you mentioned? Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, and I don't know who asked it, so I don't want to be cavalier
Kathleen.
about Kathleen. I don't want to be cavalier about what you're dealing with the diverticulitis. I have a background in gastroenterology disease as well, so have a pretty good understanding here. But what I would say is the first thing that you want to do, and this is true for all physicians, not just Liz and myself, but any doctor that you go to, the goal is to treat without medication. Diet and lifestyle changes are always the first things. So maybe certain foods that boost brain function don't work for you, but there are others. We couldn't unfortunately list them all. What I would recommend for you, Kathleen, is that you first focus on what foods you can have that do have brain boosting benefits, that can help cognitive function, before trying to find something to supplement with. Number one, it'll save you money in most cases, because oftentimes vitamins, supplements are more expensive than the whole foods themselves. And number two, because the whole foods have other benefits beyond just the brain boosting benefits, other vitamins and minerals that you'll need in day-to-day life. So I would say, first focus on doing a little bit of research. You can reach out to us afterwards, talk to your doctor, find out some other foods that could help you there before going to a supplement. That's always our recommendation with anything with regards to supplements. Supplements are really that last 1% of pushing you over the edge with something. That's where we reserve those for.
Great. Thanks, Corey.
Of course.
Well, this has been really wonderful. I'm going to steal the line from one of the rebels, Craig's line. You really got us fired up today.
That's what I was hoping for.
I hope he doesn't mind that I'm stealing his line.
He's one of my best friends in the world. I think he might even actually be on today. I know he was going to try and jump on and take a watch. So I appreciate you using that.
So, yeah, I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone signing on. And I hope you got a lot out of it today. Like Corey had mentioned, we'll send a follow-up email with all the information with the slides. So in case you forgot some of the tips, you'll be able to have that on hand. But also, based on what Corey and Liz were saying, if you stick with us this month, the month of wellness, we're opening it up to all the alumni. And this Saturday, we have Josephine Alonji, and she has a total body fitness, which is great. She does work on that balance and flexibility, on the strength, and it's at every level. You could do it seated. You could use 20-pound weights if you want, or you could use 3-pound weights, or just a band. That's what's so great about her workout. So she's going to be offering that to us for the next 4 Saturdays for the month of January. So I hope you sign up for that. The next Power Hour is Tuesday, January 12th. She's a holistic physical therapist, and her talk is Harness and Harvest from Your Super Conscious. So I think that will be another tip that we could use from Liz on that mindfulness and meditation. So I think Carolyn Kanoth can help us with that. Then on the 19th, I'm really excited about this because this is my dance teacher is going to be on here. It's movement and dance and staying engaged. Once again, you can jump on this Power Hour and learn from what Liz and Corey just told us about staying in motion, keeping your body, engaged and keeping it moving. And then the last one on the 26th is financial wellness. And I think, a lot of us, stress really wreaks havoc on our bodies, and having your finances in check definitely will lower your stress levels, and then also helps in the healthy living. So I hope you can join us for the rest of the Power Hours. Thank you again. Happy New Year to all of you. Let's hope this will be a better one than that horrible 2020 last year. And Liz and Corey, I know you're very busy coaches. Thank you for signing on today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much
having
again for
us.
having us.
You're welcome. Take care, everyone. Stay
Take care.
healthy. Stay healthy and be safe.
Bye.
Exactly.
Bye-bye.